I don't think utopia is possible, not as humans and not as we are now. We are far too captured by our evolutionary drives, by the fear of resource scarcity, tribalism, and fear of the other. And these fears are real. They were built into us over countless millennia, and they helped us survive in a world where humans existed within small hunter-gatherer bands. But how does a species that evolved in that environment transition to a global civilization? And what must we do to rise above our current predicament? One where we're fighting wars over arbitrary nation state borders and religious ideologies, where a select few have begun to hoard the wealth while the rest of us just attempt to scrape by. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. But I don't think the answer is to seek utopia. I think the answer is to intentionally engineer dignity into our society. This is the Silent Republic. Whether I'm critiquing religion or markets or the state, there is a deeper underlying principle that informs my ideological stance for each of these. I am deeply committed to resisting any and all concentrations of power. And I think that human history is essentially the tug of war that happens between different centers of power. Nearly every atrocity that has occurred happened when the scales tipped too far in any one direction. But underneath this is something even deeper still. I am anti-power concentration because I believe it violates human dignity. For civilization to exist, we have to organize, to feed and build and endure like we must. And so it's from this that we see hierarchies form, which are systems to organize. And yet, a historical truth I observe is that the larger a system grows, the more it hungers for efficiency and optimization. And I think that we can approach history like a warning from the past, especially when we're looking at it through this lens. Governments, corporations, and revolutions alike, they all start speaking that same language, one of output and optimization. And when these systems scale, humans become variables, right? Because when efficiency becomes the highest moral good, humanity goes quickly. That proverbial lever is pulled and the train rolls on, and the crushed are called necessary losses. The trolley problem asks, do you pull that lever and crush the one to save the five? And it's a neat question because it assumes that the problem is simple math. It assumes that lives can be balanced like a ledger. But these 6 individuals aren't numbers, they are conscious minds. People with memories, worlds entire. To simply collapse people into statistics is to commit the first act of dehumanization. The trolley problem should be read as a warning. A civilization that forgets the soul of the one in the service of the many has already begun to lose its own. And this is why dignity must be a pillar of any moral architecture. It is the circuit breaker that halts the machinery of civilization from grinding the individual to dust. Efficiency demands perfection and optimization, and empathy seeks connection, but dignity demands restraint, a reverence for the irreplaceable worth of the individual. Dignity is not just kindness, though, and it's not simply pity. It is the recognition that personhood is sacred, regardless of utility. Dignity whispers that you matter, even if you cost more than you produce. And that's the rub, because so many are willing to sacrifice those who are an inconvenience to them, those who they don't deem to produce enough to justify their own existence, or worse yet, that their existence within itself becomes uncomfortable for the rest. The truth is that once we open the door to dehumanization, it's nearly impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. And these individuals are often selected for political or social reasons. Immediately, the LGBTQ plus community comes to mind. Not that they aren't productive members of society. The right, generally speaking, has designated their existence as uncomfortable, and that them not existing would be better for the collective, for society as a whole. And the same is said of immigrants, as well as other minorities. And these are the directions we take, the conversations we have when dignity becomes optional. But just think about it for a second. A perfectly efficient world would be a horror to observe, much less to endure. It would eliminate the sick and the weak, the slow and the incompetent, all in the name of optimization and all in the name of progress. It would sterilize compassion to crown optimization king. And every tyrant in history has justified cruelty with the language of efficiency or optimization to save the nation, to purify the race, to strengthen the people. But when a civilization begins to measure its worth by productivity alone, it mistakes machinery for morality. And so these three become pillars of any just society worth living in. And that is empathy, restraint, and dignity. Empathy feels what must be preserved and helps us align with our fellow man, regardless of where we come from and what our differences might be, whether that's ethnic or religious or socioeconomic, right? It's that ability to walk beside another and see them for what they are, a conscious mind with an experience that matters. Restraint prevents the strong from devouring the weak, because no matter how strong you are, there will always be one stronger than you are. And so restraint prevents your destruction and mine alike. And it's dignity that sanctifies the individual within the system. And it honors the individual not as means to an end, but as an end in and of themselves, the inalienable right to exist free of oppression within society. And so these three pillars are interdependent upon one another, and without any one, the entire system begins to crumble. Empathy without dignity becomes sentimentality alone. And this is where many on the left find themselves. It's like this endless hand-wringing over slights accumulated and wrongs done. And restraint without dignity becomes oppression, because dignity alone holds the boundary of the individual against the collective. And then dignity without empathy just simply becomes pride. It's that forgetting that though we are individuals and worlds entire, we are also not islands unto ourselves. We are part of something larger than ourselves. And only together do these three pillars form a stable moral field, the equilibrium that keeps a society humane. And the truth is, every political ideology leans towards one imbalance or another. The authoritarian sacrifices dignity for order, whereas the hyper-utilitarian sacrifices dignity for efficiency. But even movements of compassion can sacrifice dignity for pity, and they turn individuals into mascots for empathy rather than individuals and agents of their own worth. Because dignity anchors the center. It is the principle that says the state should serve the individual and not the other way around. Efficiency builds civilizations and empathy sustains it, but dignity gives it a soul. It is the quiet voice that says, pause and remember the individual. And I don't think the measure of a society is how fast it can grow or how high it can climb, but whether it can look at its least efficient member and still see a reflection of itself. When dignity dies, civilization just becomes machinery. And so this is a wrestling match that's never won, because power will always seek to consolidate, and men of power and men of opportunity will always seek to take advantage. So we must design systems on a civilizational level that can repair in real time, that can absorb the unknown and unforeseen, and then still not lose sight of the individual. This piece is based on one of my Substack essays, and the link for my Substack is in the channel description. There's no paywall or anything. And I think writing is a different medium that lends itself to more complex ideas and building that out. And so I try to post weekly on there. So if you're interested, please go check it out. This is the Silent Republic.